בכך עמוד א', starting from י"ט עמוד ב', on the bottom in the Mishnah. אין צולים, בצל, בשר, בצל וביצה, you're not allowed to roast meat, onion and eggs, אלא כדי שיצולו מבעוד יום. It got to be roasted from before Shabbat. We explained earlier in the Gemara that since we're talking about it's on the two opinions, but the last one, since it's on the gechalim, on the barbecue, we're concerned you might going to flip it on Shabbat. Shema Yechateh. So, by the way, it's very important to know, it all depends up to people. So if you like your steak medium rare, and it's already reached to it, then you can leave it on the fire on Shabbat. If you're Persian, you like it well done, then you can't leave it on the fire on Shabbat. So it all depends on your own
preference,
flavor and your preference. Yeah. So again, in Solim, you're not allowed to roast basar, meat, batzal, onion, and betza, and egg. By the way, that's a good recipe. אלא כדי שיצולו מבעוד יום, it must be roasted from before Shabbat. Second din, אין נותנים פת לתנור עם חשיכה. Am I allowed to put the challah in the oven before dark and let it bake through Shabbat? That's not allowed. I got this question once in the halacha hotline, and they put it on the oven, on the timer, and then the challah will bake through Shabbat. One says it's not allowed. ולא חררה על גבי גחלים. They used to have a piece of dough on tops of coals, and it used to be roasted in special flavor bread in the desert. אלא כדי שיקרמו פניה מבעוד יום. Only if it was already got colored from before Shabbat. So if it got a color before Shabbat, it's okay to let it through Shabbat. But if it didn't get any color before Shabbat, we're concerned you might going to increase the fire to make sure
it will be a dough?
Baked dough, yeah, bacon and bread. Rabbi Eliezer אומר, כדי שיקרום התחתון שלה. He said, the bottom one needs to be baked before Shabbat. So as long as the bottom area is baked before Shabbat, it's fine. Next thing, משלשלים את הפסח בתנור עם חשיכה. קורבן פסח, they used to have it ראשו על קרע והקרבו. So the lamb was a complete lamb, the whole korban, they used to put a stick inside and put it in the oven and used to roast itself around. Like shawarma bidyu, כן. So that allowed to be put in Shabbat even if it's not fully, if it's not ready before Shabbat. למה? Because how do you do קורבן פסח? בחבורה, on a group. So when you do group, people are careful. People are going to let each other know, Achi haram, don't touch it, genom, you know. People will give each other a hard time, and they're not going to do it. לא, זה מתחיל לפני וזה ממשיך לתוך הלילה. So you're allowed to let it continue into the night. שמשלשלים את הפסח בתנור עם חשיכה before dark, even though it's not cooked before Shabbat, because בני חבורה זריזים and they will remind each other. Another דין, ומאחיזים את האור במדורת בית המוקד. In בית המקדש, there were four corners and had special לשקות, chambers, and one of them was בית המוקד. The Kohanim had to walk in בית המקדש barefoot, right? Barefoot. When you walk barefoot, it's cold. So there's a special fire under to make the floor
heated
hot.
Tiles.
Huh?
They had heated
tile, yeah, on their version. Heated tile. So they used to light the fire in Bet HaMoked. So over there, we're allowed to ignite the fire, to start the fire, even though the fire really didn't expand itself throughout the wood, as we're going to see later in the Gemara that is required. The Gemara would explain was a specific special din in Beit HaMikdash. Lama? We have a rule, Kohanim, look Rabbi Ophir, Kohanim zrizim men. Kohanim are quick people. So Kohanim are very alert. Zariz and somebody is aware and alert to get things done. So Kohanim, we are not worried they're going to turn on the fire on Shabbat. So only in Bet HaMikdash, in Bet HaMoked, it's mutar for the Kohanim to start the fire, even though it's not fully lit. So מאחיזים את האור במדורת בית המוקד. That's only on a bonfire in בית המקדש. It's allowed to start the fire. But to בגבולין, in the borders, which is refers to outside of בית המקדש, כדי שתאחוז האור ברובו. Anytime when you light fire, the fire gotta catch everything. You know, when you do barbecue, sometime on vacation, you suffer 45 minutes to light the coals. That's the coals. Can you imagine by wood? How long it take? We were in Tennessee. We were trying to light it. What a nightmare. And we realized that because of the snow, it got wet. whatever we've been through. So therefore, before Shabbat, if outside of Beit HaMikdash, then I see it's outside of Beit HaMikdash, the light's supposed to be, the fire is supposed to be lit and catch majority of the wood in order to let it continue into Shabbat. If it's not fully majority catch the fire, we constrain the mind on a fire on Shabbat.
And aren't you allowed to light a fire in Beit HaMikdash on Shabbat? Weren't you only allowed to fire in
Excellent, the Gemara will talk about it.
Okay.
Rabbi Yehuda Omer, that's din by wood. By bepechamin, if you have a bonfire made out of coals, kolshu, as long as it's starting to get color on the pechamim, it's already enough to let it continue, and we are not worried you're going to find the fire on Shabbat. So we have, by Beit HaMikdash, it's mutar to start. By gvulin, outside of Beit HaMikdash, you got to do it right. But by coals, we are lenient because when you start, it's fine, and we assume you don't need any more help. This is our Mishnah. We're going back to the beginning of the Mishnah in the Gemara. The Gemara asks, when we said you're not allowed to roast basar, batzal and betza from before Shabbat, how much you need to be roasted in order to let it into Shabbat? Amar Rab Lazar, וכמה אמר רבי אלעזר אמר רב, כדי שיצולו מבעוד יום, כמאכל בן דרוסאי. בן דרוסאי was a thief. גנב בן גנב, כל המשפחה שלו גנבים. So he was a thief when thieves are very busy people, you gotta eat quick to get the job done. So he used to eat his food, there is a מחלוקת between the ראשונים. Rashi said, שליש בשולו. Third of it's בישול.
It's so funny they use him as a measurement.
נכון, and he's all over Ben Dorsai, he got special, I don't know, this Ganav got special...
mentions,
again.
He's mentioned a lot.
I saw a pshat somewhere, I don't remember, that he was really somebody who did...
כל שם שכתוב בגמרא זה בחיי מתים.
לא, רק המורה. המורה, כן. So, Ben Dorsai...
בן גנב, בחיי מתים. זה הורג חיים, לא בחיי מתים.
לא, אומרים שפעם אחת, once the גנב of the city died, so, they went to the funeral, and they asked the rabbi, the sped, you got to make eulogy. What can I say? This is Ganav and Ganav. What can I say about him? Rabbi, you're getting paid. That's your job. Make it up. I said, you know what? Okay, I'm going to speak. So he said, this guy was fulfilling תפילת ערבית בשלמותה, all of the תפילה. ממש מילה במילה. אשר בדברו מעריב ערבים. He used to go in the evening. בחוכמה פותח שערים. With wisdom he used to פותח the door. ובתבונה משנה עיתים. He asked him, were you at night? No, I was there in the morning. In the morning, הוא מחליף את הזמנים. He said, I was there on Monday, but he really was there on Tuesday. So that's דרגה of גנב. Okay. So, וכמה, again, how much the meat needs to be ready? It's got to be a third of his cook. And like I said earlier, it goes by preference. If by you, it's enough to have medium rare. Some people like only rare. Some people like blue. מה הכי טעים? blue, מקבל מכה. One side, on the other side, זהו.
Oh my god.
כן.
ככה אתה אוהב, לא?
No, look, I was in well done medium. I'm in medium rare now. Soon I'm going to get to rare.
I started in well done also. I moved down to medium well now.
You medium well also? Medium well. I'm medium rare already.
Now I'm on medium well.
You started rare?
No, I mean...
yeah.
Medium rare. I was thinking, what did I just say? Well done, I mean.
The more rare you eat the meat, you feel the more classic, right? And when you stop eating it, you much more. Okay, Tanya, Itmar Nami said also, Amar Rabbi Yassi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol shu sheme'achal ben drosai, anything that already cooked to the level of ben drosai, and bo mishum bishum nochrim. There is no problem of bishul akum. When a goy cooks for you, it's prohibited. You're not allowed to let a goy cook for you. But if third of its cook already was cooked by a Jew, the goy can continue the cooking, and there is no problem of bishul akum.
So then from now you can
on Shabbat.
What? No, not on Shabbat. This is the general din, not on Shabbat. General, anything that you cooked, it's already third of its cooked. The goy can continue for you.
From now you can derive that if the Jew lights the fire, just lights it and starts the fire.
No, you can't derive. It's got to be third of its cook.
But in the restaurant, Mashgiach...
That's something else, but that's not a
But can we?
I'll tell you later.
So then, what's the issue with Shabbat and bishul achar bishul? If this is already a third is considered bishul, what's the issue with bishul achar bishul?
So there is a מחלוקת in the Shulchan Aruch what's considered cooked. And he bring two opinions. First opinion is gotta be fully cooked, and the second opinion gotta be third. The Rama says v'chen noagim. We do like the second opinion. So the Maran brings that halacha if you're allowed to leave food on the fire on Shabbat, like we said now. So according to the first opinion, it's got to be fully cooked, and according that's I think Tosfot, and according to Rashi and Ran, it's got to be ma'achal ben dorsai. So we have a rule: if Maran bring halachot stam, he said the first halacha he said stam, it's got to be fully cooked to leave it on the fire on Shabbat. V'yesh omrim even ben dorsai yetzanav. So we have a rule in Maran stam v'yesh halacha kestam. So the halacha Maran should be the Sfaradim that it must be fully cooked. The Rama conclude after saying the v'yesh omrim v'kach noagim. V'kach anu noagim, I think. So lefi Ashkenazim the halacha is like the second one.
Yeah.
There is a sefer, it's called Eretz HaChaim. I happened to find it in this very rare book. I saw it in Torah Treasure in Miami Beach. Yaakov had it sitting 30 years on his shelf. So he said, I have old books, you want to buy it for cheap? So I saw Eretz HaChaim, Rabbi Chaim Siton. He brings all of the minhagim in Eretz Israel, Eretz HaChaim. So he brings all of the minhagim in Eretz Israel in Yerushalayim that were before the time of Maran, before the time of the Shulchan Aruch. So even though Maran hold like the first opinion, that's got to be fully cooked, but we go by Maran only on new things, but things that halacha before Maran were different. So he said the minhag of Yerushalayim was that even if it's not fully cooked, like the second opinion, you're allowed to leave it on Shabbat. And that's why Rabat Yosef even brings that halacha lemaaseh that we as Sfaradim hold that only if the third is partially cooked, it's okay. The problem would be on Shabbat itself. If it's partially cooked, do we hold like the first opinion or the last opinion? So I was talking about that with Eliyahu in sitting on Shabbat. So the minhag of Yerushalayim to hold like the second opinion was only before Shabbat.
If it's a third cook
Cook
before
it's enough.
Shabbat.
The minhag was not on Shabbat itself. Nafka mine. You open the chamin on Shabbat. You see that it's only third cook. According to the first opinion, you're not allowed to cover. According to the second opinion, you're allowed to close it. It's not considered as cooking.
Yeah, it's not.
So halacha lemaaseh, you're not allowed to close the fire. If the third cook is not allowed to close. But the Kaf HaChaim, the Mishnah Berurah brings
Close the pot.
the lid. Yeah, close the lid. Patachta b'Shabbat, and it's not fully cooked. Not atama, it's cooking.
But putting it back,
It's not atmana. No, covering the pot itself is not atmana. It's other things that insulate. But if you cover the chamin on Shabbat and it's only third cook, you're not allowed to close it. But since we have the two opinions, the Mishnah Berurah and the Kaf HaChaim brings that if you did close it on Shabbat, you're allowed to eat it. Because if you close on Shabbat food that wasn't cooked, was avera done on Shabbat, you're not allowed to eat it. But if you did it at least on Shabbat morning, you're allowed to eat the chamin, like the second opinion. So to answer your question, that's a machloket. So only from before Shabbat which we did, after Shabbat לכתחילה לא, בדיעבד כן.
לא מרן נסמך כמי הרבנים, ומשהו מרן החליט
לא,
מעכשיו פסקו.
לא, מה שהיה מנהג לפני קדום. That's all the care of the Ashkenazi. מה הרמה אומר? רמה says וכן נהגו. Our minhag is before Maran.
בארץ ישראל.
Maran doesn't bring his own היתרים.
אבל באירופה, לא זה ארץ ישראל. בסדר, אפשר להתווכח.
לא, אני לא ממציא את
לא,
זה.
אני...
כן, אוקיי, בסדר. אוקיי. טניה,
It's third cooked from last
Third, yes. So Mishnah Berurah said we don't know what third cook, and we are machmir today to half cook.
What is Rambam, no? 50%.
Yeah, 50%. We machmir to 50% cook.
לפני שבת.
Yeah. How do you define third? It's a half cooked, which I don't know exactly how to define it, but the way the poskim define it, it's got to be edible. If it's edible, it's fine. So if it's a candidate potato,
Blue.
blue. Tanya, Hanani Oimer, כלשהו כמאכל בן דורסאי, we said the same thing, מותר להשותו, you're allowed to leave it from before Shabbat, על גבי קירה on top of a stove, אף על פי שאינה גופה וכתומה, even though it's not wrecked or covered. So the same thing, to leave it on the fire on Shabbat, if it's third cook, we're not worried you're going to find the fire, and you're allowed to leave it. Next thing, we said, נותנים את הפת, we're not allowed to put the bread in the oven. And Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Eliezer said that the bottom portion needs to be baked. Ibalu tachton each. Which one? It's called the bottom. Tachton deach de gabei tanu, because they used to Anybody been in the Bukharim? In the Bukharim, there is a tabun, like an oven. It's a round oven. Kacha goes down. There was a guy with an eye and a hat, with one eye. Everybody not used to stick the bread kacha inside. And, lafat. It's the best lafat, you know. So the bread stick on the walls of the oven.
Wow.
Inside on the bottom. So I said it to Rav Maliach, הוא אומר לי, כל הילדים שלו תלמידי חכמים גדולים, היהודי הזה, אז הוא ככה עם העין, ככה בא לי, הלאפה שלו מיוחדת. So you see that the lafa sticks in the oven, so and then it's getting baked over here, and getting baked also. So which one you call the bottom? The one over here facing the fire, or the one attaching the
wall?
The actual wall? So that's a question of the Gemara. היא באה לו תחתון ההך דגבי תנור, the one who's touching the actual walls of the oven, or דין מתחתון ההך דגבי האור, or the one which facing the fire which toward the bottom. תשמע רבי אליעזר אומר, כדי שיקרמו פניה המדובקים בתנור. It's got to be the one stuck by the walls, which Rashi said it's a chumrah, because the one that facing the fire gets baked faster. Exactly. So he said that's not enough according to Rabbi Eliezer. We need also the bottom one to be baked. Next one, we said in the Mishnah, בשלשלים את הפסח, you're allowed to put the korban pesach inside of the oven. The Gemara says, my time, how come you're allowed to put the pesach in the oven when it's not cooked? משום דבני חבורה, זריזים, and the people of the group, or doing the korban pesach, they are zarid, they're taking care of each other, and they will remind each other not to do it. The Gemara says, Hala v'achi, no, without the reason of the group, you weren't allowed to put a lamb inside of the oven before Shabbat. But the Gemara says, V'amar mar, but we said earlier, a few dapim ago, Gadya, when you have a goat, ben lamb, ben sharik, ben lo sharik, shaper dami. We said over there, we hold halacha lemaiseh, that goats, you're not going to open the oven on Shabbat. Lama? Because wind is not good for the meat of the goat, of the lamb. Because if it's going to be wind, if you're going to open it, it's going to ruin it. So we said, therefore, by lamb, you're allowed to leave it on Shabbat in the oven, even if the oven is not sealed, because you're not going to open it, because the wind will ruin the meat if you're going to open it on Shabbat. So why here we permit to leave the lamb in the oven on Shabbat? Only because of the group, when we said earlier that lamb has no problem to be left in the oven because you're not going to open it in the middle of the process. The Gemara says, lo, hatam mintach. Over there it's cut into pieces. Hacha lo mintach. Here it's one whole piece. If it's cut into pieces, then the wind is bad for it. You're not going to open it on Shabbat. But if it's a whole lamb, it's not problem to have wind. It's not going to ruin it. Then you might going to open it on Shabbat. So unless the reason of the group that there is, and they're encouraging each other, you wouldn't be allowed to leave the lamb on Shabbat. So when we say lamb, it's okay to leave it on Shabbat, even if it's not cooked by pieces. You're not going to open the oven. But here you're going to open the oven. It's asur unless we have the group. Next one, umachizin et haur. You're allowed to start the fire on the Beit HaMoked, in Beit HaMikdash, a special chamber to have warm floor before, and even though it's not fully fired, Kohanim are zrezim, they are taking care of each other. The Gemara asks, Menan Emili, how do we know that it's mutar? Amar Ravuna, the pasuk says, Lo tevaru esh bechol moshvotechem. You're not allowed to light fire in all of your residence on Shabbat. Bechol moshvotechem yata mavir. Only where you reside, you're not allowed to turn on fire on Shabbat. אבל אתה מביר במדורת בית המוקד, but in בית המקדש, that is not considered the resident place, rather it's a specific place, Beis HaMikdash. Over there, you're allowed to light fire on Shabbat. The Gemara says, hold on. מתקיף לרב אחי, אפילו בשבת נמי. If so, that the prohibition of lighting fire on Shabbat, it's only by your residence and not in Beit HaMikdash, you shall light even to turn on fire on Shabbat. Here we said only from before Shabbat you're allowed to light it. According to this pasuk, it should be allowed even on Shabbat. The Gemara says, lo, ela amar Rav Chisda, קרא, this pasuk is for something else. קרא כי אתה למשרי איברים ופדרים ודעתה. We have a special thing if you brought on Beit HaMikdash on Friday korbanot, and certain limbs and fat fell off, you're allowed to return it on Shabbat to the Mizbeach, to be burnt. That we're learning from this pasuk. But stam lighting, that's only for the actual Mizbeach, you're allowed to have fire on Shabbat. But around Beit HaMikdash, you're not allowed to light fire on Shabbat. If so, how come in Beit HaMikdash is allowed in Beit HaMoked in the chamber to light fire over there? ואחה, קרא קריאת תלמידים אומרים, וכהנים זריזים מהם. But the reason the fire is allowed has nothing to do because Beit HaMikdash mutar fire. Because what's mutar fire in Beit HaMikdash? It's only in the Mizbeach, for Korbanot. But as we have a technical reason, Kohanim they are very careful people, they're on top of the game, and they're not going to turn on the fire on Shabbat. So even though it's just the beginning of it, they're not going to touch it on Shabbat. So we said this heter, that you're allowed to start the fire before Shabbat and let it continue on Shabbat, that works only by Beit HaMikdash. But we said, ubagvulin, but outside of Beit HaMikdash, at the borders, כדי שתאחוז האש ברובו. The fire must be caught in the majority of the wood. Majority of what? There are two ways to measure majority of the wood. One way, it's if it when penetrate inside of the wood itself. One way is if it's around the majority of the wood. So there are two ways. So the Gemara is question, Mai Ruban, what majority means? Amarav, Rov, Kol Echad ve'Echad. Majority of each, one and one. So meaning the majority, Rov Kol Echad ve'Echad, is got to be outside. V'Shmuel Amar, I'm sorry, I messed it up. I explained the next Mara before. When you have a lot of wood, what majority means? So Rav Amar Rov Kol Echad ve'Echad, majority of each piece of wood, majority of it has to be lit. ושמואל אמר, כדי שלא יאמרו תאווה עצים ונניח תחתיהם. The definition of majority doesn't need to be each wood needs to be majority of it. Rather, that people wouldn't say, bring some more wood under so we can light it. As long as people feel it's safe to be continue lighting, that's enough. So according to Rav, every wood majority needs to be fired, but according to Shmuel, no. As long as people don't say, okay, let me have some, paper to put under some more wood. As long as people don't ask for it, that shows that it's enough. Tani Rabbi Chia לסיוע לשמואל. Rabbi Chia said to support Shmuel, כדי שתהיה שלהבת עולה מאליה, we want the fire to continue by itself, ולא שתהיה שלהבת עולה על ידי דבר אחר. The שלהבת should not continue lighting through something else. So that's referring when the Kohen light the menorah, the Kohen Gadol lights the menorah in Beit HaMikdash. So he said, so the fire has got to be lit, that the fire should be continued by itself, and you don't need more support for the fire to be lit. So it should leave, when you're holding the shamash to light the nerot in the menorah, it should leave it long enough that the fire can continue by itself and not with support of another fire. So same thing by us. As long as the fire can continue by itself without support of other woods, it's okay to leave it like that on Shabbat. So we have a Raya to Shmuel, the definition of majority is as long as you don't ask for more support fire to help it lit, if it can be continued by itself, it's okay to leave it on Shabbat. So this dinim apply when you have a bonfire. So bonfire, it's got to be that you have enough fire that you don't need support for the fire. The Gemara asks now, etz yechidi, if you have one chunk, piece of wood, how do you define over there? What's majority over there? Rav Amar Rov Ovyo, majority of inside of the thickness got to be lit, the thickness itself lit. Ve'amri la berov ekefo. But some said that Rav says majority of around that it needs to be lit, not inside, only outside. So you have two opinions. What Rav said, either majority of the inside or majority of the outside. Rav Papa is the one. Remember Rav Papa?
Shalom.
Shalom. Amar Rav Papa, ilkach ba'inyan rov ovyo ve'ba'inyan rov ekefo. Now we need both, since we don't know what Rav said, if it's enough the thickness or enough the surrounding. So you need both. So before Shabbat, both needs to be lit. Ketanoe, like we said in the Braita, it's a מחלוקת תנאים. רבי חייא אמר כדי שישחט העץ ממלאכת האומן. Rabbi Chia required that the wood will be destroyed from a oman, from a worker to work with it. So if the fire penetrates inside, there is no way to build anything out of it. רבי יהודה בן ביתרא אומר, כדי שתאחז האש משני הצדדים, for the fire to be caught from both sides. So his hold is not about penetrating, it's about the outside. This is the two opinions. ואף על פי שאין ראיה לדבר, even though there is no proof for it, זכר לדבר. זכר לדבר, that it got to be caught from both sides. The pasuk says, את שני קצותיו אכלה האש, both sides the fire had eating, ותוכו ניחר, and inside is dry. היצלח למלאכה, can you work with it? So you see the definition is that outside must be lit. Another learning about fire, והאח, האח, it's a chimney? Chimney, you have the fire on the bottom? Chimney is there. Is
the fireplace, you have the fireplace.
fireplace. So that's והאח. והאח לפניו מבארת. So why fireplace calls ach? What's ach reminds you?
Brother.
אחי, מה נשמע? Yes, so ואח מבארת. My ach, what's ach? אמר אחונה. Brotherhood. A lot of woods together. That's what's considered fireplace. ושמואל אמר, עצים שנדלקו באחונה. I'm sorry, first opinion, אחונה means ערבות. ערבות called אחונה. Second opinion means a wood that being lighted by brothers. How? Each piece of wood
Lights
another one. ההוא אמר לאומן באי אחונה. Somebody said, who wants to buy אחונה? השתכח ערבתה. ערבה it's also called אחונה. So אחונה it's either ערבה or wood that being lit through the brotherhood that each one lighting each other.
What's arava? It's those things, the plants that we have.
ערבה.
So that they're called also the same thing.
כן. אמר רב הונא, קנים אין צריכים רוב. So we have two opinions over here. First one is רב הונא hold, when you have reeds, you don't need majority to be lit. If you have a bunch of reeds around, a pile, even if a little bit was already catch on fire, everything will be automatically catch on fire. But agdan, if he tied it as a bundle, then צריכים רוב, because it will be hard for the fire to penetrate all the way in. גרעינים, when you're talking about seeds they used to take the seeds of the date and use it as flammable material. So he said גרעינים, not גרעינים שחורים, right? The seed of the dates, אין צריכים רוב, you don't need majority. Meaning, even the beginning of an lit, it's enough, everything eventually will be lit. אבל נתנן בחותלות, if you put it into special sacks, כמו חיתולים כאלה, if you put it in bags, and it's all concentrated together, צריכים רוב is not going to lead by itself, and majority needs to be lead before Shabbat. So you see the Rav Huna over here all the reeds and גרעינים and the seeds of the date. If it's scattered, you don't need the majority to be lit. If it's tied together, you need the majority to be lit. Does that make sense to you? No. אמר רב חיזדא, the Gemara says, מתקיף לרב חיזדא, רב חיזדא attacked. אדרבה, אין לך מסתברא. The logic is the opposite. קנין מבדרן. If it's scattered, it's windy, the fire is not going to catch in. אגדן לא מבדרן. If he tied it, it's not going to be scattered, and the fire should catch everything. Same thing, גרעינים, by the seeds. מבדרן, if it's scattered, the fire will go away. נתנה בחותלות, if you put it in bags, לא מבדרן, it's not going to be scattered away. But the Gemara said, itmar nami. So the word nami over here, it's not correct. Itmar, you gotta say itmar. It says, Amar Rav Kahana brings a middle opinion. He agreed with Rav Huna with one, and Rav Chisda with the other one. Amar Rav Kahana, kanin she'agdan tzrichim rov. By reeds, if you put it as a bundle, majority needs to be lit. Lo agdan, en tzrichim rov. If you didn't tie it, it doesn't need majority. So you hold, by reeds, you hold like Rav Huna. Because reeds, if it's tight, the fire is not going to catch. Only if it's scattered, the fire will catch. גרעינים צריכים רוב. Seeds require majority. If it's spreaded, נתנן בחותלות, but if you put it together, the fire going to be catched by itself, and צריכים רוב. So you hold by גרעינים like Rav Chisda. So by reeds you hold like Rav Huna. If it's bundled, you need majority. If it's scattered, you don't need. By גרעינים you hold like Rav Chisda. By bundle you don't need. If it's scattered, you need. Last part. Tani Rav Yosef, 4 מדורות, the following 4 types of materials for fire, אין צריכים רוב, does not the majority to be lit. של זפת, tar, if the beginning it's lit, everything will be lit. של גופרית, sulfur, ושל גבינה, או מה? גופרית, לא, גופרית, כן. של גבינה, it brings over here, it's called קירה. זה לא ממש גבינה. Let me see how we write it over here. I think it's a certain type of material. איפה הגבינה שלנו? לא יודע. So של גבינה, I think it's called קירה. I think it's a type of wax. ושל רבב and of fat. So all those materials are very flammable material. If the beginning catch on fire, you don't need to be worried about the rest. במתנית התנא, in the Braisa we said, well, what is over there של גבינה?
Cheese.
Cheese, it said cheese, actual cheese. Can you see in the footnotes? Israeli cheese or Parmesan cheese?
עדן.
In the next text, the word shira, wax appears in place of gina.
What he said?
אומר by the
Agra.
the Reef's text, yeah.
Reef, okay, so you take גבינה, okay. Either.
Oh, that's what makes animal fat.
Okay, במתנית התנא, the Braisa we said, אף של קש ושל גבבה, straw and stumbles. You know stumbles?
Stumbles.
לא יודע, ככה זה גבבה.
קש בגרבה.
Crush the pieces of straw and small pieces of wood. That's stumbles. Small pieces of wood. Also, if you start it, it will continue by itself. אומר רבי יחנון, עצים של בבל, the woods of בבל, אינם צריכים רוב. עצים בבבל are dry. So as soon as they start letting the fire will continue, you don't need majority. מתקיף לרבי יוסף, מהי? Which type of wood are you referring to? אילם סילטי. Can you help me, Josh? If you're talking about thin pieces of wood, and in Bavel they used to make thin pieces of wood, how come you don't need majority? Hashta ptila, when you have a wick to light the candles, אמרו לה, המדליק צריך שידליק ברוב היוצא. The one who light a wick needs to light the majority that's sticking out of the oil. Silti me buy a piece of wood, לא כל שכן that you need to light majority of it. So cannot be that you're referring to thin pieces of wood, because if by a wick you need to light majority, kol sheken by pieces of wood. אלא אמר רבי יוסף, you know what we are referring the Bavel wood, which type of wood are we referring to? אמר רבי יוסף, שוחה דארזה. It's a, do you say it in English?
Cedar tree.
Cedar?
It's a type of tree.
Yeah, it's a type of tree that is thin, and between the shell to the wood, there is like wool inside, כמו צמר, like the hair. Okay? You see it? You see type of tree?
Yeah, and a little thing sticking out.
Yeah. So there is hair in between. So when you light the beginning, the hair in between will catch the fire, and therefore it's okay before Shabbat. Rami Baraba Amar, we're talking about Zaza. Zaza, it says over here, it's a, לא, זה לא זוזה, כאילו, זזה. זה צמח קטן, it's a small,
Moss. It's like the little green thing on the tree.
get everything on the tree that it's very easy to be catch on fire, and that can be lit even before Shabbat. Even if it's not fully lit, it's okay to leave it over Shabbat. הדרן הלך, יציאות השבת. We shall return to you בלי נדר. יציאות השבת, and let's do it now. חזרה.